Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about Goblin Recruiter. This is the next installment of the Building a Better Legacy series, and this one is one. It's probably my favorite one, my favorite card on the list. Well, at least the stuff that I'm testing. I think I might actually like Necropotence more. It's hard. It's hard. Hard choice. Uh, but both manipulate a lot of cards, and that's pretty sweet to me. I think that's pretty cool. So, Goblin Recruiter is an interesting one. Uh, it's one of the few creatures that's actually on the Legacy ban list, one of three, the other two being Hermit Druid and Deathrite Shaman, just put on there a little bit ago. And so, why do we even have a creature on the list? Well, um, it's pretty strong, obviously, right? Like it's about a million worldly tutors stapled to a 1/1, which is pretty good. It's because it's sort of a carryover from the old extended lists when Type 1.5 became Legacy in like 2004-ish. Um, they sort of like combined some of the banned lists from vintage and then extended because it was sort of like a format that was kind of sandwiched between both. Um, so let's look here. What does Aaron Forsyth have to say? So this is regarding the ban list, like what cards they put on it. And so he says, not every card that has ever been banned and extended is banned in this new format, but we felt the most powerful ones had no place here. These include Earthcraft, Goblin Recruiter, Hermit Druid, Landtax, Oath of Druids Replenish, and newly exiled Skullclamp and Metalworker. With 1.5 now a little less like Vintage and a little more like Extended, it makes sense that the ban list is a compromise between the two. Most of these cards are very cheap combo enablers that are hard to defend against. So, uh, that's basically sort of their reasoning. It's like powerful, really broken stuff from Extended. Obviously, PT Tinker was the format from the previous year in Extended, where Mirrodin has just released, and like there was all sorts of broken decks. There was all the Tinker stuff. There was Food Chain Goblins. There was all the Hermit Druid base decks. I mean, I can't even the Goblin Charbelcher decks, which is also I guess basically Tinker deck. I mean, stuff all over the place. Basically, it was banned. It was broken. That's why it was banned. Goblin Recruiter's ability to stack an arbitrarily large portion of your deck allows Goblin-based combo decks to kill as early as turn 2. That's too fast for a healthy environment, and the Recruiter is one of several casualties of our effort to eliminate realistic turn 2 kills from the environment. And he was talking about Extended. Um, so that's basically, I mean, why it was banned. It's just it's just too good, you know, too good. And here they're talking the about the strength of Goblin Recruiter and Extended. It plays a completely unique role in two different combo decks. Food Chain and Goblin Charbelcher decks both required him before they could pull off their combo. In addition, its synergy with Goblin Recruiter was remarkable and probably could still be abused in some other way, even if Food Chain and Charbelcher didn't exist. Thus, we all agreed pretty quickly that Recruiter had to go. So basically, they're talking about it was good and extended, is broken, obviously. In the deck, the Goblin deck that had Recruiter in it didn't even have Lackey in it for the last time it was played in like the big Pro Tour. It didn't like I don't it didn't top 8 in PT New Orleans, but it was obviously like an absurd, just a stupid deck, right? Especially since there was no good like control decks really in the format. There was one sort of like Tog deck in the top 8, but I mean, I don't think it was really a good choice to actually like, play control in that format when you had Tinker and all these other broken decks. Like, that was just silly. So basically, um, yeah, it was banned because it was broken, and there's nowhere, nothing about the weird time related logistical stuff like that just doesn't happen, right? There was no. It's not any different than any other combo decks, um, at the like in current Legacy. So any of this time related stuff is just it's just something that is made up, just a meme, just a meme. So what decks really want to play with it? Well, we just want goblins. I mean, basically anything with a lot of goblins. So there's basically two different versions. Well, there's the classic goblin list that we just, play Aether Vial, Wasteland Port, and you just add Goblin Recruiter to it. Or there's, of course, the Food Chain Goblins, which is what got Recruiter banned in the first place. That's obviously aggro combo Food Chain, or Food Chain's the aggro combo one, and the Aether Vial Classic Goblins list is more aggro control-y, more mid-range, I guess, is probably a better way to put it. And these decks, again, they look pretty similar. There's not much difference. Um, Obviously, you got to play green and the food chain version, whereas the other one could be mono red or just splash other colors. Uh, but yeah, basically, looks pretty much like, cards you see in Goblin decks. You pretty much always want to play at least one Prospector, Sharpshooter, and Siege Gang. Um, and then you probably want a Sting Scourger there too in the main deck. So you can, because it's easier to siege gang, not siege gang, Sting Scourger with Food Chain out, because you can use Food Chain mana to use it instead of, you can't use that mana to play Incinerator, unfortunately. You have to have the Prospector to sack two dudes and then Incinerate. So Sting Scourge makes it a little bit easier when you're comboing off if you need to bounce a creature, like a Crystal Brand or something. Um, and the acceleration, you probably want some number of Chromox. 4 is sometimes awkward. You can sometimes draw wonky hands with it. So maybe 3 might be better. Hard to say. You may want a couple Simian Spirit Guide. I'm not sure. Kind of. Obviously, Spirit Guide's really good when you're comboing off. Not as good in the long game. Because you'd rather have permanent mana sources to play your spells. And then you may want one Ancient Tomb. Too many Ancient Tombs obviously gives you a lot of bad problems. This negative anti-synergy, the colors mana isn't very good when you're like comboing off, or just in general when you're playing, because obviously War Chief reduces the mana cost, so extra colorless doesn't really have anywhere to go. And also another thing, little weird interaction between fetch lands and Recruiter. Obviously, you don't want too many fetch lands, or I should say, you don't want to draw too many fetch lands if you have Recruiter and you want to play the Recruiter early, because then you can come into situations where you play the Recruiter turn 2, but the only thing for your next mana source is a fetch land that you can play on the next turn, and so that causes issues there. Of course, an option to replace the 2 Bloodstained Mires would be with Karplusan Forest. And lastly, the other thing is you can play more. Obviously, you can play more non-creature spells in your main deck, because Recruiter does a pretty good job of, reducing any sort of inconsistency with your ringleaders. So a couple bolts, like a pair of bolts, I feel might actually be kind of nice to test out. But it just depends on what the metagame ends up looking like. But if it kind of looks like what it does today, the bolts are obviously very good at dealing with like first turn delvers. It's pretty big, and other stupid crap, elves, and all sorts of other things to give you a little bit more breathing room. You only need a little bit more before you can combo off or something. So or set up like a sharpshooter or something like that. So how does this work? Well, basically, you're gonna stack your deck with Recruiter, and so this is assuming you have like a food chain in play, or going to play a food chain next turn and have it resolve. Stack your deck with Recruiter, putting Goblin Ringleader every 4th card, and then you're going to put a Ringleader on top if you don't have a Ringleader in your hand, so you can obviously draw it next turn and then combo off if you don't have a Ringleader to combo off that turn. Early game, you can just stack Dorks or whatever, War Marshal to build up your board, and Gem Palms or whatever to kill their stuff and give you more time to draw and play more lanes or whatever, and all that good stuff. And basically in the classic Goblins list, as instead of like the Food Chain Goblins list, you don't really ever stack your deck most of the time. You don't even really want to play it on turn 2 a lot, unless you didn't have any other option and you have enough lands or whatever. Because obviously you can't really combo off. You can do some stuff with like Ringleader and Prospector like in the late game. So that's then you'll stack like a bunch of stuff in the late game, but you don't really stack it too much. Kind of depends a little bit, but usually no more than like 8 cards a lot of the time. And then also you got to be careful about being disrupted. So you got to know what you're playing against. So you don't really want to cast like turn 2, like cast your recruiter, then they wasteland you and bolt your guy next turn, because then you might not even be able to play anything else the rest of the game, which would be pretty bad, right? So if you don't know what you're playing against, sometimes it doesn't hurt if you think it might be like a tempo deck or something. You should be able to figure it out pretty fairly. Like if they cast first turn Delver, you should obviously know what you're against. If they're casting first turn Ponder, I mean, who knows? So sometimes it might be a little bit better to slow roll it. So you just gotta be careful with that. So is it still good? I mean, basically, yeah, it's powerful. It does give you better ability to grind for both of the classic lists and food chain lists. And then obviously the food chain list you can combo off, which is very nice because it lets you deal with be able to kill combo decks before they kill you. Because it's usually not enough. A lot of the disruption you play, unless you have like 2 or 3 pieces of it, they can easily overcome it and just still kill you. So sometimes it's just better to just kill them instead. And so food chain lets you do that. So being able to kill on turn 2, which are pretty rare, honestly, or turn 3, that's good. That's right around when I mean, a lot of these decks average turn is like turn 3 or whatever. Some a little bit, something like Sneak and Show can actually help you because they can, when they show and tell, you can put your food chain into play or some other dork and then try and combo off next turn. So it can save you mana, which is kind of nice. So that matchup gets a lot better, and that's probably the most common one you'll face, whereas something like Storm is a lot more difficult to play, even though it is faster. So it does make your combo matchups a little better. It doesn't seem like you lose that many percentage points against like the control decks. But basically the biggest thing is Recruiters let you grind a lot. And then of course the random combo wins and stuff, which are nice, but you can't control whether you draw food chain or not, so there's what are you gonna do? So a lot of times they'll just play like a classic Goblins list, except you just can't lose if you can go a couple turns and just play your spells. So that's nice. That's basically the biggest draw to playing this deck, is that you can't outgrind this thing. Like how do you beat this thing? Like if they stack like just 16 cards worth of gas, like how do you even deal with that? Like it's just kind of silly. It's stupid, right? Like that's why it was banned in the first place. So it's good, but the rest of the format has caught up. It's not 2004 anymore, That's a long time ago. And there's a lot of new cards that are very, very powerful that have been printed recently that are just absolutely like absurd, like ridiculous, undercosted, stupid stuff, like color breaking stuff that other, like True Name. Like how is that even a card? That's stupid. Like that's just the dumbest card ever. Like it's silly. I mean, fortunately, Pile Driver has Pro Blue, but that doesn't make it any better, right? Like that's just a dumb card in general. So everything else is caught up, and Goblins hasn't really got much. It actually's got a couple cards this year, Crater Maker and Trash Master, which is pretty nice. But it's definitely its power level. It's sort of relative to the rest of the format's been relatively static. The biggest thing it's gotten is like Caverner Souls. But other than that, it's just sort of stayed where it's always been. And then everything else is just shot up through the freaking roof. Like it's ridiculous. So giving this deck a boost, a shot in the arm, I think that's great. I think that'd be good. It obviously is a lot better versus like the Grixis decks. Getting hemmed is not fun. It's not as bad when you have infinite gas on the top of your library. Then that's not as big of a deal. So that's sweet. So that's pretty sweet. And obviously your matchup versus Miracles and stuff is always good, and everything else is, all your non-combo stuff is usually pretty okay, depending on the deck. I mean, Legacy is such a wide format, it's hard to really generalize, but um, it's good. It's good. Food Chain's actually a little bit of a better card than I thought it was. I thought it'd only be useful like in the combo turns, but I mean, it feels like every time you draw is like a combo turn. Because I always thought, oh, it'd just be kind of useful or useless, like when you draw it on turn 5 or 6 or something. But a lot of times it's like if you'll have like a matron or ringleader in your hand, then you can just kill them then. Um, so that's that. So Food Chain itself seems like a little bit of a better card than I remember. Um, so that's kind of nice. So I don't think it's over the line. I think it's about where it should be. I think the deck's obviously really fun, very skill intensive. I mean, the Goblins deck is hard to play, just as is in general, but this makes it a little bit stronger. So that's kind of nice. I think it's good. I don't think it's too good though for current Legacy, and I I wouldn't ban it. I would say probably unban it and not really have too many like, oh, I don't know, because I mean it only really fits in Goblin decks, and they're a known quantity. You can't really change them too much. I mean, you can play stuff like Kiki Crafter in it or whatever, which is just, I mean, there's no reason to. Like, you can, I guess, but like those are kind of shitty cards on their own, and they're not that good, and they create weird draws, and they're sort of just like, they're vulnerable to removal, and just no. It's not. I'd rather play like more stuff that's actually more useful, like additional Crater Makers or something, or Mog War Marshal, which is really good in certain matchups like Eldrazi or the Death Shadow decks. Um, but because if you can combo off, you just use all the cards you have normally in your deck, which is just a bunch of pile drivers and 2 War Chiefs and some random dudes, and that's all you really need. So anyways, that's my opinion. I think it's basically one of the things I'm more sure about. If I'm wrong, then they can just reban the thing, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So thanks for stopping by, guys, and I'll talk to you later.